While male philosophers are revered no matter how backwards, incorrect, or offensive their ideas may be, every generation women must start over, as the work of the previous wave of feminism is considered outdated and overdone. As a result, we are stuck rebuilding over and over, like Sisyphus rolling his boulder up the hill. It's for this reason that I am so interested in reading the works of older radical feminists and lesbians. The best place I've found to not just read, but physically hold these works is Atlanta Vintage Books, where I was recently able to read several feminist journals from the 1970s. Today, I want to read a few essays and works on radical feminism and race. Men have constructed an elaborate rationalization of why women are naturally suited to their role. This is the whole fantasy of women's nature. Gentle, loving, unaggressive, tender, modest, giving, patient, naive, simplistic, simple, irrational, instinctual, intuitive, home-centered. This is what they want her to be, so they set it up as the ideal of womanhood, and treating it now as a norm, so that because women are that way, they are suited to the role imposed on them and must be happy. Any woman who dares reject the role or admit she is unhappy in it is accused of being unwomanly, neurotic, trying to be a man. She is treated like a freak, a misfit. She is assumed to be sexually maladjusted. Even women who can't fool themselves about their situation, who know that they're miserable and frustrated and humiliated as women, still subscribe to the male categories to the extent of feeling guilty and regarding themselves as neurotics. The true woman who accepts her destiny without complaining is much celebrated in the mythology. In practice, men walk all over her. But that's to be expected because being a true woman means you let men walk all over you without ever complaining. Because there's such great stigma attached to not accepting your sexual role, very few women will admit they are unhappy with it, and most women take great pains to avoid appearing unfeminine. Even men who seem to enjoy independent women, just, except in a very few rare cases, want a more challenging conquest, and in the end, if she doesn't yield, it will boil down to the same thing. A secure man can give his woman a lot of leeway, but only as long as he knows that if he ever wants it, the final word will be his, that it is he that is choosing to give her this freedom. Men are insecure about their own sexual roles too, but for different reasons. In the case of women, there is a basic alienation and rebellion which comes to its first crisis at puberty, when the girl realizes that she's getting stuck with biologically and its social consequences. Basically, she doesn't want to be a woman. She wants to be free and respected like men. She doesn't want to be enslaved and held down and ordered around like a woman. But she learns that to get anywhere in this man's world, she needs his approval, and the only way to get his approval is to play the part of the happy slave and find fulfillment in being a sexual object, being giving and understanding, being willing to center her life around a man and play the role assigned. If a man isn't sexually attracted to her, she's nothing. Old maid, frigid, failure, lesbian, and the ultimate accusation, which alone implies all the others, man-hater. The most militant feminist collapses in abject hysterical denials at this charge. Why is she so defensive? There are plenty of men who are quite proud of being woman-haters. No one accuses them of being impotent or homosexual. The reason is that a man can lead a full, profitable, meaningful life without women, but women's lives are held to be meaningless and unnatural unless they are built around a man. So if a woman is a man-hater, her whole life is perverted and unnatural, whereas a woman-hater's life is merely considered less rich or less interesting. But that's not the only reason woman-haters are perfectly comfortable with and even proud of their attitude and why men wouldn't be particularly insulted or threatened to be falsely accused of it. It seems perfectly natural to everyone that one might hate women. Women are empty-headed, petty, parasitic, irrational, stupid, and sterile. With individual exceptions, men are free and strong and admirable by the standards and structures of the society. Men, who control the society, have set up masculine traits as noble and feminine traits as ignoble. If asked, however, they would explain that these feminine traits aren't contemptible in a woman, only in a man, but what that really means is that they aren't a perversion of the female. Contemptible attributes are still contemptible attributes within the value system of a single society. Little girls know perfectly well that little boys look down on them for being sissies. Women are natural slaves, and so it's fitting that they act like slaves. Still, the value system of society elevates freedom and individuality. Even women internalize these male standards, which have been set up as society standards. Women, in fact, have more contempt for women than men do, because the glamour of sexual attraction is lacking. There is some tendency among women to admire a man who despises them, since they see themselves as despicable, and consequently can't respect men who admire them. This is a sick and destructive situation, but a perfectly natural result of the perverted role allocation. Women, then, have good reason to reject their sexual roles, and in fact do it first, but are brainwashed by the society's mythology and pressured by the threat of losing their sexual attractiveness. This would mean losing their qualification, their ticket, to the approval of men, and they know that without it, they cannot have a normal, meaningful life. So eventually, they accept it. After all, they have no choice. They are women, they aren't men. They can't change their anatomy, so they might as well accept it and at least get the approval for being true women. Because they have tried to rebel, made the desire to be men conscious, and come to realize that it was completely impossible, that sexual differentiation was absolute, not conditional, each realizing that whatever her personality, whatever her desires or aspirations, she is still a woman. They are, on some one level, much more secure in their sexual identity than men. Anatomy itself determines sexual role for a woman. She may be afraid of appearing unfeminine, but she knows that she's stuck with being a woman. Men have never consciously faced the desire to be women, and found it impossible. So it is less clear in their minds that the sexual differentiation is a matter of anatomy, and not a matter of how you act, the role you play, active or passive. They think they are men because they are active, domineering, strong, courageous, individualistic, aggressive, coldly logical, successful in business. When they fail in any of those things, or recognize in themselves shortcomings and weaknesses and feminine qualities of character, they think they are unmanly, and this terrifies them because not to be a man is to be a woman, and they despise women. The result is a constant, desperate attempt to prove that they are men. Their bad faith in enslaving women got them into this trouble. They took human beings with human potential identical to their own and enslaved them. To justify this, they had to create a false dichotomy between male and female, assigning certain human characteristics exclusively to one, others exclusively to the other, in order to make it seem that the sexes were quite different by nature to justify the enslavement. It is not a shame for women to want to be free like men, since freedom is recognized as a good thing by the society. They recognize that they cannot be free, but they understand why they might wish to. But for a man to wish to be passive is a great shame to himself. It's unmanly, and that's contemptible. He doesn't understand what's wrong with him to want such a thing. Women, then, are in a much better position in this respect. All the human characteristics and aspirations they find in themselves are either admired in society, masculine, or assigned to her sex, feminine. This explains the great insecurity men have about their own masculine role, and why they are particularly threatened by rebellion by women, more than one would expect from the attachment of any master to his position of mastery. It may be that the oppression suffered by everyone in the society, oppression by economic necessity and political impotence, makes the male even less likely to give up the little power things he does have. Pushed around himself, exploited and dehumanized, he has a compulsive need to push someone else around to regain his pride. Women are perfect for this, since there are lots of them and they don't fight back. Another reason men have never been willing to give up being mastery of women is that they are actually frightened of having to do women's work. First of all, it is degrading, as men are suited to do more challenging and enjoyable work, and maybe in performing the mindless drudgery of women, they will become like women, a terrifying thought. Since they've shoved it off on women and refused to do it, it has come to appear even a greater calamity to the male nature than it actually would be, believing, of course, all the while, that it is enjoyed by women, who are suited to it by nature. In this discussion, we've noted a number of reasons men will be unwilling to give up their sovereignty. 1. Having made this phony dichotomy between masculine and feminine traits and attitudes, and seeing in themselves certain of the feminine qualities, they are uncertain in their sexual identity, and try to make themselves appear more manly by emphasizing the sexual difference, by making women more womanly. 2. Men are afraid of doing unpleasant or unchallenging women's work, afraid it will be degrading and unbearable to their loftier souls. They have a heavy stake then, in her being better at it and more suited to it. 3. It gives them someone to feel superior to, someone to push, and also someone to need them and admire them. 4. Finally, there's a simple conservative attitude. I'm comfortable with the status quo. I don't want anything to rock the boat, because chances are it won't be as comfortable afterwards. This essay was written by Dana Densmore, and it's titled On Female Enslavement and Men's Stake in It.